Here we are on the North Loop Trail at a familiar spot, just below Mummy Tree. Here's that Mummy Tree. And as you can see from the Mummy West page, if we were going up Mummy, we'd head up this way, skirt along the top of that area, and then hit the Mummy Mountain. But today we're going to do something different. I've never recorded the space beyond Mummy Tree up the North Loop Trail, even though I've traveled that usually in the other direction. That's probably the reason why. Running back from a circuit adventure. So today we're going to go up the North Loop Trail, continuing on this trail, and we're going to Lee Peak. Then what we're going to do is we are going, let me get 360 degree view as I'm talking. Then what we're going to do is, okay, just a minute. South Ridge at Kyle Canyon. Griffith Peak. And then looking down on Cockscomb Ridge. So what we're going to do today is we're going to continue up the North Loop Trail to Lee Peak. Then we're going to do some top-down adventures, series of top-downs. We're going to check the side of Lee Peak that could perhaps go to Lee Canyon, descend to Lee Canyon. And we'll just circle around Lee Peak as much as we can, avoiding cliffs, and take a quick top-down adventure there. And then we'll go up to that ski tower, or we'll descend to that ski tower above Lee Canyon, and we'll take a little top-down adventure there, see what things look like. We're looking for a Lee Canyon approach. And then what we're going to do is go to Cockscomb Ridge and do a top-down from Cockscomb Ridge. So hopefully we can do all of those adventures today. This is top-down day. We're in Kyle Canyon, and right behind this hill ahead is Mount Charleston. Okay, onward we go. Continuing on up the North Loop Trail. Here's the trail. And you can see just the edge of Mount Charleston beginning to emerge. So we've circled around. And there's the south ridge of Kyle Canyon. There's Griffith Peak. And here's the route between Griffith Peak and Harris Mountain. Here's Harris Mountain. Then let's take another look back. Mummy Mountain behind us. So here we are continuing to ascend, and by the way, here is, let's get a better view. There's Fletcher Peak. That's quite a few peaks to see from this point. Okay, continuing on up the trail. But here's one of my favorite spots. It's a little outcrop here on the North Loop Trail. And here you can see where we are. And the bristlecone pine forests are getting more and more beautiful. Well, here's another type of pine, Ponderosa pinyon. And What I like about this is Mount Charleston has suddenly come into view. And in addition, I'm not sure, but I think this is Lee Peak, our destination for the day. As you can see on the right side, cliff. But we need to get down the right side. So I'm going to explore the backside of Lee Peak and see if there's a way down to Lee Canyon. Just about 1/8 of a mile from here, from this point on the trail, there's that connection just 100 feet to the right, and you hit the top of the north ridge of Kyle Canyon, and that route that I take from Mummy when I take the wilderness route. As you can see here, very majestic cliffs all around us. This part of Lee Canyon, this part of the North Loop Trail is very wild. The South Loop Trail, at this point would be a burnt out forest. But here you have beautiful, beautiful bristlecone pine forest. So, as you can see, that last little jog up to the top of Lee Peak is going to be interesting. I think it's probably at least 500 to 800 feet higher than the elevation where I am right now. Okay, so onward and upward. By the way, had I taken the high route from Mummy straight over to this level without having to descend and reascend, there's Mummy Mountain. You see the toe of Mummy Mountain to the right. I would have navigated to a point right above those trees and then descended onto the upper North Loop Trail where I am now. I'll show you that connection in just a moment. Okay, I want to make sure you can find that connection to the upper North Loop Ridge and to that abandoned ski tower, which I believe is a descent to Lee Canyon from here. We're going to check that out today. So the mark is this little cairn. You can almost miss it. And ascending to the top of this ridge right here, which is only about 100 feet, you'll see the abandoned ski tower. We'll look at that on the way back. But before I take any side trips, I want to get up to Lee Peak so that I know I've got the energy coming downhill to do those side trips. So now there's descent, ascent, descent, ascent, and I bet I've got at least 800 feet to 1,000 feet by the time I descend and then reascend before 1,000 feet of ascent to get up to Lee Peak. So we'll take a look at that part of the trail in a moment. Well, continuing up the North Loop Trail, Mount Charleston is emerging in all its glory. And looking down these canyons, it looks like a potential future approach. Not sure. There are also some real substantial cliffs there. So, and below too. So, not totally sure. I bet there are people who have tried it before. But if you're going to have a route up to the top of Mount Charleston, it'd probably be right up that wash in the center. And then on up and connect with the North Loop Trail below Mount Charleston, if that is possible. Okay, and there you can see the south ridge of Kyle Canyon. Some beautiful trees here. And let's go ahead and see where Lee Peak is emerging. So, continuing along the North Loop Trail just a little bit more, I think beyond these trees, you might be able to see Lee Peak. Yes, let's take a look here. There's Lee Peak. And somewhere along the top of this ridge below Lee Peak could be a connector trail that gets me up to Lee Peak from Lee Canyon. And we'll explore a little of that today. Okay. Onward and upward. Well, Lee Peak is beginning to emerge. There it is, right in front of us. Another, I bet it's 500 feet. There's Mount Charleston, Griffith Peak, and the North Loop Trail looking back. And a lot of potential routes down to Lee Canyon. We'll explore those on the way back. Well, there's Lee Peak. But the reason I wanted to make another video right here is there is a mysterious cairn. And what this makes me wonder is, am I looking at the very spot that people summit from Lee Canyon? I don't know. It looks like, boy, there's the faintest little trail right along here. This looks like something people have walked before. Once again, we'll try this on the way down. But this is looking pretty hopeful. You know, why would there be a little trail right here, or evidence that people have walked this, and a cairn right over? Well, why would there be a cairn here? Another reason could be that there's a little campsite. So, I don't know. Anyway, it's just an interesting little spot that bears some exploration. And we're continuing on up to Lee Peak, and maybe we'll see a little more, more of a possibility of a route down to Lee Canyon when we get up to the top of Lee Peak. There's Lee Peak coming into sharper view. And what I want to show you here is just the bristlecone pine trees. Every last one of them is unique. They're like snowflakes. Unique growth history, battered by the elements. But look at these. So amazing. So these are the survivors up at this altitude. We're closing in on 11,000 feet. But look at these trees. Just totally amazing. Among the oldest living organisms. Some have lasted, grown to an age of 4,000 years. But I hear that there's a grove of, I think it's an ash grove in Utah that is, the whole grove is one organism that's 20,000 years old. So I guess you can always get something older or something that's lasted longer no matter what you achieve in life. Anyway, there's some beautiful trees. And then, of course, here's Mount Charleston. And we're not going to get good views on the way, looking back down Kyle Canyon yet, because the sun is just at the wrong angle. But when we get up to Lee Peak, we'll take another look. Another cairn on the trail up ahead here. So I don't know. I don't know if those cairns are showing potential routes down to Lee Canyon. We'll explore some of those. They may just be helping people stay on track when there's snow on this trail. I would not do this North Loop trail in the snow simply because the drop-offs are too great. The snow barriers are too great. I think it's gonna stay, right now it's the third Saturday in October. I think that the trail could remain passable through December. I don't know. Sometimes I think last year it was snowed in by October, but it could remain passable through December. But come January through May, even June, this trail is pretty much impassable unless you're just a real snow animal. And there are some people that love that. I've done that a little bit before, but no, I like the clear trails, and I love it when it's just wide open. The sun is shining. I don't like slogging along the snow. It just takes so long every step. So this is ideal right now. Okay, onward. Oops. That rock formation we were looking at that I called Lee Peak, that's right here. Oh, look at this bristlecone pine, by the way. Wow. Okay, back on track here. This rock formation is not Lee Peak. So sorry for that confusion. We're on the North Loop Trail, and as you can see, it's getting more and more wild, and these bristlecone pine trees are just so amazing. I could spend a whole day just looking at these trees. But guess what? That is Lee Peak. So There are going, and then just give you a perspective here. There's Mount Charleston. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to send a series of switchbacks, and then at the top of those switchbacks, before the trail turns left and continues along toward Mount Charleston, we're going to take a little detour up to the top of Lee Peak. And it's a detour that you should really take on the way up to Charleston, because it's only like 1/8 of a mile each way off the trail. It's very brief, but there's a little summit box up at the top of Lee Peak, and you can see things that you can't see from Mount Charleston. You can see all of Lee Canyon. You can look all the way down Kyle Canyon. It's just a beautiful view, and you'll see that in a moment. But I would say if you're planning to go up Mount Charleston by way of the North Loop Trail, or you're descending and you did the whole loop, take that Lee Peak little diversion. It's well worth it for that little 1/8 mile diversion you're going to make, about 11,200 feet, somewhere in there. You can see on the Lee Peak page of Las Vegas area trails, I'll have the exact number of feet, but it's right around 11,200, so only 700 feet less in elevation than Mount Charleston. So yeah, Lee Peak is our destination today, and we'll be doing some exploration up at the top of Lee Peak. Okay, and here we are. Love these rocks. You know, it's just the combination of these rocks and bristlecone pines. Look at these colors between the contrast between the cliff and the bristlecone pine tree. It's just incredible. You know, to experience this is to really have lived life at its best. So there you have it. Okay, so onward and upward to Lee Peak. Well, I didn't realize this was going to be bristlecone pine tree day also, but I got to say that bristlecone pines on this trail are among the most beautiful I've ever seen anywhere. Look at this. You know, bristlecone pine is like a combination of beautiful sun-polished driftwood and the living tree growing out of that. And as these bristlecone pines grow in this very hostile environment, if you look closely at them, you can see that every time that, you know, something just, you know, it's growing in a direction that's not working, it'll just abandon that direction, like we have right up here. And here, you can say, I'll just abandon that, and it shoots off in another direction. If I could figure out how to do that with my own life, with grace, like these trees do, when something doesn't work, just head for a new direction. And that's their secret for living 4,000 years successfully, is just keep changing direction and flowing your life with what is going to work. So there you have it. And you know, the ones that do not change direction, the ones that just go straight up and don't have that ability to branch out, they're the ones that do not survive. So I entitled this little portion of the video, What I Learned from 4,000-year-old bristlecone pine trees about surviving and thriving in the long run. Okay, so I'll probably be showing you more trees because I just, this is just incredible. But anyway, continuing on up, we got to hit Lee Peak at some point today. Okay, here we go. I'm on a viewpoint just below Lee Peak on the switchbacks. Yeah, it's a little wide spot here, just off the trail. And beautiful, pretty unique view of Kyle Canyon. And there's Mount Charleston, and then looking straight up would be Lee Peak. And this time we're certain it is Lee Peak after all. So once I get to the top of these switchbacks, which is very soon here, we will then be able to take the little offshoot that goes up to Lee Peak. Bristlecone pines, still amazing, amazing. Look at them growing right on the edge of this cliff. Imagine how they get beaten by the winds in the winter in this exposed condition, but they survive. And as you can see, more areas that died, but then they branched off in a different direction. So amazing trees these are. Okay. Oh, and look at these up here along the side of this cliff. There they are. Good view with the sun in the background. Or behind us. So anyway, on up to Lee Peak. Okay, one more little thing I just noticed. By the way, here is Madre Mountain from this same viewpoint. But look at the top of this little cliff. Right in the center, there is some man-made object, perhaps an antenna, I don't know. Anyway, somebody had to climb up there to place that. And so, that could be a destination from Lee Canyon up to this point. Who knows? Okay, once more. I think I got Lee Peak wrong. I said this was Lee Peak. And so I guess this proves that it's the third thing that looks like Lee Peak on the North Loop Trail. But as I said before, I guarantee this is Lee Peak because there's no place else to go. So the way up Lee Peak, and here's the North Loop Trail, by the way, and there is a wide spot here on the trail, and there's view of Mount Charleston. Once again, beautiful, beautiful bristlecone pines, combination of driftwood and sun polished and then living pine needles and branches. Okay, so you get up to this point and you see Mount Charleston. The trail is going to circle around there. There's Lee Peak. And so I'm betting that the way up to the top of that is circle around the left side, take a right, and then head on up. So we'll check that out when we get closer. But we are mighty close to the summit of Lee Peak. Okay, and as you can see, amazing cliff formations, trees hanging on the edge of the cliff. Some that didn't make it, pounded by the weather in the winter. But here we are, Mount Charleston, Lee Peak. Okay, continuing on around, when we get to that left side of Lee Peak, we'll look for what's looks like the best little trail that takes us up to the top. Okay, from this wide spot, this does look like a potential approach up Lee Peak. And there's a little cairn right here that seems to indicate it could be. Goes up to this point and then looks like it would take a left. That's the only way you can go. Cross that saddle up there and then right up that avalanche slope to Lee Peak. The only thing is, as I look from this perspective, I'm looking at that avalanche slope and seeing where it drops off at a cliff. So if you slip on that avalanche slope on the way up, you're not going to stop for a long time. So I'm going to continue on the North Loop Trail, and amazing thing about this, you wonder how in the world could this trail lead around the base of, well, around that cliff there. It just doesn't look like it's possible. But it does, and you will see. Anyway, I'm going to go around the other side, the left side, and ascend. I have ascended that way before, and it just looks to me like a much safer ascent, more gradual, better footing than trying to go up that avalanche slope right below the summit. So so that's the way I'm gonna go around the left side and then take a U-turn and head on up to the top of Lee Peak. Okay, continuing along the North Loop Trail, beautiful view of Kyle Canyon. You can see all the way down to Charleston Village, and interestingly enough, you can actually see the trailhead that I started on a little over 3 hours ago, about 3 hours and 15 minutes ago. You can see Griffith Peak and on the right, and Harris Mountain on the left. Here's Harris Mountain and Griffith Peak. And so there's that circuit route between Griffith to Harris, up the South Climb Trail to Griffith, and then down that ridge between Griffith and Harris. It's very doable. And then down up to the top of Harris, and then down that, you can see kind of a spine that goes off a little bit to the left, slightly to the left from the top of Harris, and take that down and end up in the Rainbow subdivision and over to Cathedral Rock, which is, as a matter of fact, right in the center there. And I don't know if there's going to be a very good view here of Cathedral Rock. It should be about in the center there. Maybe on the way back, the sun will be at a better angle. You can see the, here's a little outcrop here. Some very beautiful outcrops. Also a bit scary thinking walking out on them. So anyway, that's where we are. And there's Lee Peak. And so what I'm going to do, I do believe that the ascent up to Lee Peak, it's not marked at all. But it does appear to me that going right up this area would make a possible Lee Peak summit. I'm going to try that. If it doesn't work, I can always come back down. But I believe that's a good path to summit Lee Peak. Hopefully I can get back down to this very spot. And that'll avoid circling around more to the left side of Lee Peak. So let's see what happens. Well, here's a little bit of what you're facing going up this route. And you can see how you can ascend and then skirt right along there. We're going to try that. And it looks like it's a winner, but we'll see. Anyway, continuing on up this hopeful looking route up to the summit of Lee Peak, which is right up there. Well, what are the chances? This may or may not be Lee Peak because there's yet a fourth summit that looks like a good candidate for Lee Peak over there. And so let's head over there and then backtrack. It's either that one or this summit here. We don't know. So anyway, by the time you're done seeing this video and all the mistakes that I have made on the way up to Lee Peak, you will know how not to get lost on this trail. So maybe this is Lee Peak, or maybe that's Lee Peak. Let's find out. Let's head for that peak and work our way back this way, if that isn't indeed Lee Peak. Well, after going a bit further on the trail, I'm looking back at that third summit that I thought might be Lee Peak, and I am going to go for that. I'm going to go to the top of that, and if it's not Lee Peak, then we'll just have missed it for today. I've never summited Lee Peak from this direction, so it's really hard to say which one is actually Lee Peak, but it's got to be this one or right up here. So I don't know, maybe I'll go up here just to see, since I'm so close, just to see what is up here. So, well, let's just find out. Okay, backtracking from the fourth Lee Peak candidate back to that third Lee Peak candidate. I'm just going to go for broke here and go right up this little ridge to what could be Lee Peak. We will find out. Certainly we have taken enough, we've scoped this out enough that if this third peak that we saw on the way up the North Loop Trail is not Lee Peak, then we're going to have to bag it and someday come up and try the fourth. So let's go up this third peak, up the North Loop Trail, and see where it leads us. And by the way, if this is indeed the peak, then that's a good marking spot. And it looks like we would just start ascending right about in this area. Getting more confident that this third peak along the route up from the North Loop Trail is indeed Lee Peak. This is why I think I found it more easily on the 4-peak circuit. You can see that on LasVegasAreaTrails.com. I think the reason I found it more easily coming from this direction is it's a little more obvious that this could be Lee Peak. No promises, but it's a little more obvious from this direction than it is the other direction. That little excursion that I made just a moment ago is actually from the, if this is Lee Peak, that would have been the descent route. And so that would have actually worked too. But I wasn't sure. So let's go ahead and try this, see what happens. The higher I ascend this ridge, the more certain it looks like Lee Peak, which would make it that third summit. I got a little spooked and went one too far. So now I'm approaching Lee Peak from the direction going down the North Loop Trail after Charleston. This is looking good. I remember this from the 4-peak circuit day. So onward. One thing that I'll say is, yeah, good news and bad news. The good news is that my knee is recovered after a couple weeks of being a little off, and I was wearing knee braces even walking around during the day. And I think turmeric may have helped actually. But the rest helped. But the bad news is that yes, there was a rest for about 3 weeks where I maybe went as low as 10, 15 miles a week, not counting my my adventure day on Saturday. And so I am definitely out of conditioning. I haven't been up at this altitude for about 4 weeks or more at this point. So this is why I'm a bit tired. But once again, the good news is that another knee injury is overcome, and that really feels good. Okay, onward. Continuing on up, I'm almost 100% confident, I guess that means 95%, that this is indeed Lee Peak. And you can see opening around us, good view of Pahrump. And then on the other side of Pahrump, those mountains that you see in the background, that silhouette of a mountain range, the highest point, I believe, is Telescope Peak, which means Death Valley is the valley immediately in front of those mountains on the horizon. And then circling around There's a shot of Mount Charleston. And there was that fourth little peak right there. Definitely was not Lee Peak. So, and there's the canyon down the other side, going toward Pahrump. Met a couple hikers the other day, the Bristlecone Pine Trail, who said they were hiking from Lee Canyon down to Pahrump. They had overnight gear, so that looks like a possible route that they might have taken right down that canyon. It looks like there might even be a trail that goes down that canyon. One of these days we'll find out. But in the meantime, continuing on up and continuing to be impressed with these bristlecone pines. I was right, it was that third peak. Here we are on the summit of Lee Peak. And you can see the summit box here. And there's Lee Canyon, ski area. Let's take a look. A little closer shot. There it is. Bristlecone Pine Trail parking lot. I don't see right now any way down this side of Lee Peak down to Lee Canyon. But what I do see is there's a ridge right in the center. It starts up about this point and it heads down. So you can see that ridge, and it seems like it's gradual enough all the way down to the bottom of Lee Canyon. So the question will be, where does that ridge begin? Now, this little flat spot that you see, I believe that's the spot that, yeah, it is the spot that had the, looked like an antenna on it. So we know we need to go beyond that. We know we need to go up to a high point right about here to catch that ridge going down. So we'll be on the lookout on the way down. I'm just totally out of energy, so not going to be able to do all those top-down explorations that I was thinking of doing today. I think that what I need to do is rather, when I'm not coming all the way up to Lee Peak, I'll do some top-down explorations. And when I'm in better shape, what I've learned is, yes, I have recovered from a knee injury due to a large part from resting and dialing things down to about 2-mile runs for about 4 days a week, maybe 5 days, and then the adventure experience in between. Now, before, when I ran the circuit, which was Griffith Peak, Charleston Peak, Lee Peak, and then Mummy Mountain. Believe it or not, I did all that in one day, about 12 hours. I was running about 5 or 6 miles a day, 5 days a week. I'd take the Friday off, and then I did my adventure run on Saturday that did the 4 peaks. I wasn't as tired then as I am now, which does give you an idea what kind of conditioning is necessary to do this type of experience. I would be running at least 5 miles a day, 5 days a week, and take the day off right before your long adventure run. Less than that just doesn't do it. And once again, yes, the fact that I dialed it down did save me from a knee injury, but no, it did not keep me in condition to do Lee Peak. Plus, I haven't been up this high for about 3 or 4 weeks. So that gives you an idea what kind of conditioning is necessary to, yes, I made it up here, but I'm talking about conditioning that's necessary to actually enjoy this experience. Okay, and by the way, remember there were 4 peaks and I thought each of them was going to be Lee Peak. There is the 4th one. As you can see, it was not Lee Peak. I'm standing on the 3rd that looked like Lee Peak, and the 2nd is right down here, and the 1st is this rock right down here. So 1st, 2nd, 3rd, bingo, this is Lee Peak. So if you're coming up the North Loop Trail, you will see 3 peaks that look like Lee Peak, unless you've got a map, and then you'll know exactly what Lee Peak is, and you won't have this issue I had today. It's the 3rd one. Okay, so that pretty much concludes this experience up to the top of Lee Peak. And as I said, if I'm going to head down to Lee Canyon in the future or come up to Lee Peak from Lee Canyon, it's likely to be a ridge right down in this area. And it's the ridge that seems to just gradually go all the way down to Lee Canyon. That's the ridge we're going to try. So there you have it. Lee Peak explored, and the most likely top-down route from Lee Peak down to Lee Canyon. And by the way, other viewpoints, of course, the mountain there, the highest one in the center, with that white blotch I call the permanent snowfield. Actually, it's made of something that obviously doesn't melt, which I will see later this winter. That is La Madre Mountain. And then a little bit to the left of La Madre Mountain and in the valley there is Centennial Hills area of Las Vegas. So there you have it. And I don't know if I already shared this on this video, Sorry if I did, but let's just look at the mountain peaks. Final review. There's Mummy, and then off to the right of Mummy, that green looking hill, that's actually Fletcher Peak. And then continuing around, here is Harris Peak, or Harris Mountain. And then you see that saddle going on up to Griffith Peak. And the ridge from Griffith Peak up to Charleston Peak. There it is again, larger view. And then, of course, from Charleston Peak here to the summit of Lee Peak. And the descent is going to be right down this side here, and I'll be reaching that point that we actually had started to ascend a little bit ago. I just wasn't entirely sure it was this was Lee Peak, so went a little further. Now, looking down into Lee Canyon, one more thing I want to show you is, well, there's, of course, Lee Canyon. And you see the ski area down there. Bristlecone Pine Trail, all of that. And you can even see parts of the Bristlecone Pine Trail if you look carefully on these ridges. So that's pretty cool. You can almost see the whole loop, and the upper and lower Bristlecone Pine Trailhead. But looking down Lee Canyon and out the end, across the way, you see what looks like a large wash just to the left of the Mummy Mountain cliff. In the background, to the left of that wash is the Sheep Mountain Range, which we'll be exploring this winter. To the right of that wash is Gas Peak, which you can't see from here. And in that wash, I understand there are elusive entire woolly mammoth skeletons. So we may take a special trip just to see if we can find those. So that gives you a little more perspective. And then, as I mentioned, Pahrump, and in the background, the high silhouette of a mountain, Telescope Peak, Death Valley at its base. So there you have the whole area. You're looking at probably a 100-mile, 200-mile diameter circle to the very distance. 100 miles in all directions, which you could probably see if you were looking at a world globe. You could draw a little circle. It'd be very small, but still, this is a huge area of the earth that we're looking at. Okay, and then one more point of interest is right in the center there, Cockscomb Ridge. That'll be another adventure. Okay, that concludes today's, I know I've said this before, I'll probably have more videos, but I'll say it anyway, it feels good. This concludes our Lee Peak trip. I have more to say. I haven't brought you back down from Lee Peak. So I believe it's right along this, the right side of this ridge here. And so that's the way I'm going to head down. And I believe that'll end where I had begun to ascend a while back. We will find out. And if it works, then you'll know how to get down off of Lee Peak without retracing your steps and going way over there and then back over this way. So, okay, let's find out. As promised, here is the descent from Lee Peak. And you can see just, it's so faint you can hardly see it on the film here. But there is a little pathway, or I'd say more, it's just evidence of somebody having passed here recently or before, I guess, today. And I'm going to just take that down along this ridge here. And by the way, there's the summit of Lee Peak. So we're just below the summit, about 20 feet. And this little path emerges and give you perspective. You're looking straight at Charleston. You start heading down Lee Peak. You're along this side, and a good point of reference is actually Griffith Peak over there. Griffith Peak. There we are. So that's a good point of reference. And just hang on the side of this ridge going down Lee Peak toward Griffith Peak, and follow what looks like a evidence of people having passed here before. And let's see if that does indeed lead to the base of Lee Peak and back to the North Loop Trail. Well, there are multiple potential routes down this ridge here. It looks like somebody went straight down that way. That looks a little brutal to me. This looks like a more ancient, gradual way down. So, but it doesn't look traveled recently, so it may end in a cliff. We don't know. But I'm going to continue hugging the lower, just the mid ridge here on the left of that Lee Peak ridge, heading down, continuing toward Griffith Peak in the distance. And let's see what happens. If I end at a cliff, I can always circle around back. There are a lot of ways down this ridge. I'm just looking for the best. Now I find myself weaving sometimes toward Mount Charleston, sometimes toward Griffith Peak, and trying to follow what looks like a descent pathway, although there is no pathway. So we'll just keep playing with this. The upper descent doesn't look too good. So I believe it needs to be happening down this direction, but I'm not sure. So we will find out. Still bearing toward Griffith Peak. A lot of drop-offs below me. So, but the North Loop Trail looks like it's right down there. But that's a mighty steep thing. Maybe if I hug this tree here and just stay right along the edge of it, it'll lead me down to the North Loop Trail. I don't know. I certainly don't want to go down that. So, and by the way, here's the view straight down Kyle Canyon to Mount Charleston Village. and beautiful bristlecone pine tree. Nice distraction from this avalanche ridge and not knowing if it's ending with a cliff. Anyway, I'm going to hug this tree here, and just on the left side of this large tree, and see if this leads me down where I want to go. By the way, here's a look back up. So this could actually be a valid route if this little route on the left side of this tree takes me down to the North Loop Trail. Then we're good. If not, then we're going to do some retracing, and who knows? We'll find out. Okay, looks like the North Loop Trail is, I hope that's the North Loop Trail, immediately below us. And that means that we successfully made it off this, off of Lee Peak. But I'm not entirely sure yet that is actually the North Loop Trail. It looks like some kind of a trail. We'll find out. And we're still bearing toward Griffith Peak, and keeping Charleston Peak to the right, but the bearing is more toward Griffith Peak. Okay, let's find out if this is the North Loop Trail right down here. If it is, then we made it. If not, then we may need to climb all the way back up and go down the way we came. Okay, yes, it did lead me down to the North Loop Trail. So we are good. And here's a cairn right at the base of this area that you would take up to Lee Peak. So, and as a matter of fact, this little cairn, I believe I put this here at some point. I didn't realize this was the marker for the way up to Lee Peak, but it's actually the, I believe it's the 13-mile mark on the circuit trip, 12 or 13. I'll have to go over these again to see. But that it serves a double purpose now. When you see this cairn on the trail, then just head straight up and hug the, well, you want to be on the left side of the ridge, and that'll take you up to Lee Peak. Otherwise, you continue along this trail, and for another, I don't know, 7 miles, and you top Madre Mountain if you're on a multi-peak circuit, and then head down to the Trail Canyon trailhead. Let's take a little more look around here. This is a nice little viewpoint, and a couple things that points of interest here. There's Cockscomb Ridge, and in the distance behind is La Madre Mountain, and it's that tall one. Maybe you can see the what I call the permanent snowfield, even though it's not snow. Maybe you can see that on that tallest silhouetted mountain in the background there. Maybe not. I don't know. I can't see it on my phone. So we'll see when we look at the video. But look at the rugged area here. So very beautiful. And I think I stopped here on the way up. And I actually started to ascend right there and decided, nope, need to go around. And what that did is it extended my adventure a little more. This would be the best ascent up to Lee Peak. It gets a little dicey in spots, but nothing that's exposed. You just have to make sure you're on secure rocks, and it's an avalanche hill. So just watch every step, but it's nothing that's not doable. Okay, so let's head back now. Okay, it all comes back to me. Yes, this is the 12-mile point exactly. If you begin down at the south climb, head up to Griffith Peak, over to Charleston Peak, and then around to this point, at this exact spot, you have reached the 12-mile point in that circuit. And now it looks like, I hadn't intended this when I created this little cairn, but it also marks the spot where if you take a sharp left, you can head straight up to Lee Peak. And I had no idea that even existed. But here you have it. And that means that right now, curiously, we are only 2.25 miles from the summit of Mount Charleston. So that's another little piece of information, because I know that just below the summit is the 10-mile point. This is the 12-mile point. So just a little over 2 miles from standing on the summit of Mount Charleston. So yeah, this has been quite an adventure today. And we'll just head back now. I'm going to see if I can get a little light run going down the trail. It took me 6.5 hours adventure to reach this point. Now we're going to see how long it takes to get back. And I'm thinking 2.5 hours should get me back to the trailhead. Interesting how that works. Okay, onward. Okay, the route back down to Lee Canyon. There you see that little ridge cliff area that has some kind of an antenna on top of it. That was one of our landmarks from the top of Lee Peak as we were looking down. And it's not from that ridge, but there is another ridge further along down the trail. There's another hill, little peak. And that next little peak is going to be most likely where I'm going to want to be looking for that ridge that goes down to Lee Canyon. So just as far as what is the direction down and what is not, anything beyond the that cliff is not going to do it. It's going to be, anything on this side of that cliff is not going to do it. It's more on that side. My battery is running low, and so I don't know how much more I can record, but anyway, we'll see if we can find the exact spot, and I'll record that. Okay, my best guess based on looking at this whole approach from below and from above is that the approach that's going to take us down to Lee Canyon is somewhere between this wide spot and the area right below the ski tower. And so it's going to require going over the edge here at some point. Not today, but at some point, and see if we can connect to that ridge that takes us gently all the way down to Lee Canyon. And let's just look. I'm going to lose the battery soon, so if this video cuts off in the middle of the video, then you'll know what happened. But I do believe that what I would want to do is be heading down this way, or go over to the ski tower and head down and meet up with a ridge that will take us right down to Lee Canyon. So I'll do some top-down exploration just of these two spots. These are the most likely spots that'll take us down to Lee Canyon. Not today, but in the near future. Okay, that concludes, we think, today's video. It's been a great day. Okay, bye-bye. Further narrowing down the approach to the area between this wide spot, and you can see the tree formations there on the ground, and the ski tower area. And so this whole area and ridge deserves a careful scoping out. And here you have a few landmarks here. So I'm thinking, and the ski tower is right over that ridge up ahead. So I'm betting that up over this ridge and then down is the way to get to Lee Canyon from here. So we'll try that in a bit, a few weeks maybe. We'll see. Okay, signing off. Okay, just a couple hundred feet from where we were in the last video. So definitely this ridge leads to the ski tower. Here's my little cairn that marks the spot. Just head up to the top of this ridge and you'll see the ski tower, then head down. I do believe this is the best route down to Lee Canyon, as I thought it was before, because of that ski tower, the ski lift tower. So we'll try this first next time and do a little exploration, and just to give you a little view of where we are before the battery dies. Here we are, and here's the cairn that marks the spot. Just 100 feet up here is the ski tower that leads down to Lee Canyon. So, okay, we'll try that on another day.